Thank you all for joining us today. This is a webinar on the grid optimization competition. Today we are going to discuss the online platform and submission entries. We apologize for the cancellation yesterday. There were some weather issues in Washington, D.C., and our offices were closed. Today we will cover what was planned to have been covered yesterday, online platform submission entries. And there will be a rescheduling for the follow-on webinar sometime in the coming weeks. We will make that announcement soon. Okay, that'll be on the website. That'll also be sent through the email list that we have as well. A couple quick points. One, this webinar is being recorded. Please keep that in mind. Please do not interrupt. You have questions, please send them to Cameron Hotaling. You'll see his information through the WebEx. He is the host. So again, send your questions to Cameron. Okay, we will compile those questions, address them at the end of the presentation. All right. Okay, so on to the webinars. As you should probably know, we held a webinar previously on February 4th. You can go to YouTube and find that video of our prior recording already online. P&L on their website also has the slides posted as well. That webinar that was scheduled for today will be rescheduled. As I just said, you'll be hearing from us momentarily on that. Right now I'm going to pivot over to YouTube just to show you. There are 3 videos on YouTube that you can reference. The first up here is the announcement by Secretary Perry of the start of the competition back in November. Here is your video for February 4th's webinar. You can also find it here. You can go online and listen to it and follow through with the webinar that we had covered last time. And this third webinar was from our workshop that we held at FERC back in the summer of 2018. Note that if you do refer to that webinar, that workshop, it is a bit outdated in some of the things that had been changed associated to, for instance, rules and other items, okay? But it's there as well. So you can find these videos on YouTube. And as I said, you can also go to the home page for the Go competition as well as through the news listing. Find here the webinar link and find the information from the prior webinar, today's webinar, and the next one will be posted, will be scheduled and then posted afterwards, okay? All right, back to our presentation. The next thing I would like to just make is a quick announcement. We have compiled an email list. If you are not on that email list and you want to be, please contact me, Corey Hedman. Here's my email address, okay? Couple other reminders. Trial 1 is coming up very soon. If you want to compete, we suggest that you engage with the website as we're covering today through entry submission as well as registration, which was covered the last webinar, ASAP. You will have 2 weeks to submit your code. You'll have between April 1st to April 15th to submit your code in anticipation of Trial 1, and then the results of Trial 1 will be posted around early May, okay? Of course, you should interact with the platform, use the Sandbox to see how you are performing, and then move on to the leaderboard, which as of yet still does not have any posted in front of the trial event, but we hope to have entrants engaging with the leaderboard very soon. Basically, the leaderboard is a precursor to the Trial 1 event where you can go and submit your code for the data sets that have already been publicly released. Of course, for the trial events, we're not releasing those data sets in advance. They'll be kept private until we host the events, and then they'll be released after the events, okay? If you have any questions outside of this webinar, again, please feel free to contact us. You can contact the ARPA-E, the Go Competition Administrator team, arpacomp@pnl.gov. You can also contact me, and I've given you my email here. And then based upon the question, it'll either be answered by PNL or ARPA-E staff. But again, as a reminder, if you have questions in regards to today's live webinar, we ask that you send your question via WebEx to Cameron. With that, I am done with my introduction, and I'll be passing it over to Steve from PNL, who will now lead it. So, Steve, are you able to share your screen?
Steve, you might be muted. We're going to unmute you and pass you the ball.
Guys, this is Jesse. Steve's machine crashed just a couple minutes ago. He's almost back on.
All right, okay. Thanks, Jesse. So, let's see. Then we'll just wait for a second until Steve can get his screen up and running again.
Hey, Corey?
Yep.
Can you bring up my slides?
I can also do that myself. One second. I'll bring up your slides, Stephen. You can tell me when to advance them. Just give me a second.
Yeah. Really sorry about this.
No worries. These things happen. I just want to make sure I have the latest version of yours. So I'll share my screen now. Just confirm that this is the right version. Come on. That look correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Steve. Take it over.
Okay, so let's go to the second slide. I'm going to have you. Okay, so this shows the broad overlay of the of our system. You've got on the right-hand side is the web interface with all the pages and information that's available to it. And in the middle or in the orange area is the evaluation platform, which is behind our firewall. And then there are a couple of other things that that the user interacts with. The GitHub, where they put their code, and the results, which is our super FTP site, where you get your answers back. Those smiley faces are the interaction points. So we start with the user submitting making a request to do a submission. That information tells us, what the repository is, what data set, which time frame, which division 1 or 2, 3 or 4, and language that they're going to use. That goes to the evaluation platform, which sends the SSH key to GitHub to access the repository. The repository is cloned. That information is put in the container along with the data set and the division information, additional libraries that are necessary to run the code. The code is run in a container, which may actually be spread across multiple nodes. We have a fairly decent parallel computational platform behind this. After the platform or the submission is, our particular scenario is finished, the solution files are popped into the evaluation code, which does an evaluation of how good the solution is and generates a score. The score and preliminary results go back to the smiley face on the right-hand side. The tar file that has actually everything in it goes to the super FTP site, the results, and the URL which you get on the web page can be used to link back to that. So the next slide, we want to we want you to develop your platform, your code all entirely on your platform, on your side. So to do this, you need to download the available data sets. The Challenge 1 and 2, the Challenge 1 original data sets 1 and 2 are available for download, as are some very simple Sandbox data sets. The Trial 1, Trial 2, and the final data sets will not be available ahead of time. So you need to then create two programs. Your Code 1, which is going to do the base case solve in the context of the the contingencies, and this generates the solution 1.txt. And then another code which isn't bound to a really strict time limit like Code 1 is, creates the contingency solution, and we call that solution 2.txt. The score solution files are explained in the on the evaluation page. Next slide. So once you've got your code working, what you need to register in order to participate. There's several stages of the registration process. One is just a basic account registration for the individuals. Then you need a team, even if a team is only one person. And in creating a team, you also need to tell us the GitHub username, install the SSH key so we can access it, and put your Code 1 and Code 2 in your repository. And you may also want to have a submission.conf configuration file. This is relevant if you are selecting different versions of the software that we're providing. For example, with Julia, we have several different versions of Julia available, and if you want one of the ones that is not the default, you need to specify that in the submission.conf file. And if you're using MPI, this is where you control the number of nodes and the number of cores that you want to use. Then in addition to having just being registered on the website, you need to qualify with ARPA-E. And your eligibility documents go to Corey, and once he's approved that, you will be granted access for a submission via the Sandbox. The reason for this is that we want to make sure that your code is working in coordination with our platform, so that there aren't missing libraries, there are not misunderstandings about the formatting of the solution files, and just one of the most common errors at the beginning is just getting the GitHub information and the SSH key correct. Then once we're sure everything is working, then we approve you for a Challenge 1 submission. Next page. So in setting up your SSH key and your GitHub, I want to remind you that you entered on the team page when you're creating your team just the username. You don't give us the whole URL for GitHub with your username, just your username. The username is not on GitHub is not case sensitive, but when you put it into the team page, make sure it's exactly the same as it's entered in the on GitHub, because that information is bound into the SSH key, and if there's a disagreement between the entry you give us and the entry that GitHub is using, the SSH key won't work. Now these SSH keys are they're just an access credential using the secure transfer protocol that lets us access securely your GitHub repository. And there's more information about how to do this on the website. basically, to establish the GitHub SSH key, you make a copy of the SSH key that we give you, log onto your GitHub account, go to the right settings, and find a place where you deposit the key, click on the new SSH key, give the key a title, then paste the key that you've copied from us and click Add SSH key. And then your new key is ready for use, and you're ready to do your first submission. On the next slide is a summary of this. So on the upper left, you copy the key, simultaneously, independently, you go to GitHub, log in, go to the settings, the SSH key and GPG keys, add the key, paste it into the box where they're looking for it, then click on the green Add SSH key. Next slide. There's quite a bit of information out on the website pertaining to the different languages that we support, what the input parameters for each of these languages, explanations of the submission configuration, and all of the languages. We also support a number of different solver libraries from CPLEX, CVX, SCAMS, Gurobi, IPOP, MATLAB, MOSEC. And if there's one of these libraries that you would like to use that we are not currently supporting, reach out to us and contact us, and we will see what we can do about this. We do have access to PowerWorld. PowerWorld and both Siemens PSSE only run on Windows platforms. Our platform is a Unix one. But we've worked out a mechanism that we can run PowerWorld on exactly the same hardware, just on a different machine. So we are willing. We think we know how to pass information to PowerWorld or PSSE and get it back. But we need your. If you really want to do this, we need your help as soon as possible, because getting all the protocols worked out in this complex environment is non-trivial, and the time for doing a serious submission here is rapidly approaching us. So please contact us if you want to do something involving either PowerWorld or PSSE. Next slide. Additional resources. If you go to the Challenge 1 page, you find all the challenge-specific stuff, including the problem definition, explanation of the input files and the format, the output files and associated format, the evaluation process, how the scoring works, and you'll see the leaderboard. The leaderboard is currently empty because people are a little slow in getting everything to work. So you need to try this, get going here as soon as you can. There are also the general references I've already mentioned about the available solvers and languages. There's a lot of background information, keeping in touch. What the should have highlighted also the forum and the news. Keep an eye on those to see if other people are having problems that are interesting to you. Next slide. So you're ready to submit. So go to the home page, click on the login, and what you will see is that it'll request your username and password. Your username can now be either your username that you give us or your email address. We had a little confusion. Some people were entering their email address instead of their username. Now we will accept either one. And then that will take you to the next page. This is the top of your account page. At this point, you should have generated, signed, and uploaded all the proper forms. But if you need to change anything, this is where you find those forms. Then going to the next page, the bottom of the account form. This is the information. There's that edit button there at the top of the page. And I want to remind you that all citizenships are required here. DOE is very fussy about this, and if you don't give all of your citizenships, and you get to the end of the competition, you could be disqualified. And as your first submission, you can see that there are no submissions found at this time. So then the next thing you do, on the next page, go to the Sandbox page. And assuming that you are properly qualified, you will see this blue Submit. If you don't see the blue Submit, you have not been approved to do that. So assuming that you are, you click on that blue Submit button, go to the next page, and you create a submission. You get enter a submission name, which is something for you to keep track of. Any notes that you want to put on it, this is version something or other of some trial. Then your repository name. Now, this is not your username. This is not your GitHub username. This is your repo on GitHub. And then you can enter a branch. The default is the master branch, but you can enter whatever branch you're using. Tell us which language script that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use Python. And then which data set. The data sets, right now, there are 3 of them. The first one I want you to use is the very simple IEEE 14, because that runs very fast, and if there's errors, you find them very quickly. There are also a couple of larger data sets that are single scenarios taken from the original data set 1. So the C1 is challenge 1, OD1 is original data set 1. These are the real-time network 1, scenario 1, and network 3, scenario 1. So these are taken from these are 2 scenarios from the 50 scenarios that are in the original data set. So practice on these. There's also a capability of selecting which division for the Sandbox. Only division 1 is working, but that's not going to be the case for the original data set. So on your first try, click the blue Submit button, and we go to the next page. And you will get echoed back a submission page which has your submission ID, which is what we use to track the submission. If you have a question about an individual submission, please include the submission ID so we know exactly what you're talking about. There's also a red Terminate button on this page, which does just that. If you hit the Submit button and you realize, oh, I forgot to do this, or oh, that's not going to work, or you're watching a multi-scenario thing and you see it's going off the rails, you can hit the Terminate button to kill the submission. But this is not going to work for trial 1, for trial 2, or the final submission. This is only for your use in the development stage. They also have a submission information box, which echoes back your submission name and the notes, and then a little bit more technical that reminds you of which repository and branch and the data set and the language choice and which whether it's a Sandbox or the challenge 1 submission. At the very bottom, typically you will see it sometimes takes the back end or the evaluation platform a little bit time to respond. Sometimes you get a message right away, but sometimes it'll just say, have no message yet, and you should click refresh. If you click refresh and this does not go away, something has gone wrong with the platform. We've been notified. You don't have to notify us. The best course is to try the submission again. We generally get things fixed pretty fast. There's also, when you have get to challenge 1 and you have multiple divisions, all the logging information for all divisions gets scrambled up on this page, so you can select which division you want to look at on this particular page. On the next page, you can see the results at the end of the submission. We see that the information is being presented from the bottom up. So the latest information is at the top, but there's a slight asynchronous between asynchronicity between the messages. And at the very bottom, cloning actually occurs after the receive, but they're essentially, the messages got, because of the asynchronous, they got swapped. The cloning, if it fails, look very carefully to see if there's a typo in your either the username, the repository, or something else. That's a typical error, is that you typo the repository name when you make the submission. Then there's evaluation executing and then run. So that's when this scenario, when we start executing your code and when we stop executing your code. Then it goes to the evaluation and gets a score. The score in this case is not a very good score, because the method I'm using here basically just echoes the starting point, creates a solution out of that, and that's not a very good solution. A good score would be much, much smaller than that. There on the Sandbox dataset page is information about what a good score looked like and what a good solution 1 and a good solution 2 file should look like. Then there's the each scenario, of course, gets a score. All the scenario scores for a network model, or the geometric mean of the scenario scores from the network model score. In this case, it's the same because there's only one scenario. And of course, the dataset score in this case. The dataset score is a geometric mean of all the network models within a dataset. Here it's the same. At the very top there is the final is the score for the submission. There's some detailed information that you can. There's a link there that you can go pull down a tar file for just that scenario. The reason that we do this is that some of the solution files for the larger data sets get quite large, so we don't want to burden you with very large solution files if you don't want to see them, but you want to see your summary results. So this is the link that you would follow to get your solution files and the detailed solution results. Up above their submission results link contains the information that gives you the summary score, some messages, basically echoes all the messages that you see on the screen here, and an output for each section. And we'll cover that in the next page. So the main tar file consists of a output folder for every one of the scenarios. In this case, there's just one. The messages that are received at the highest level, and a score.csv. Now, the score consists of each scenario will be summarized here with a score, the objective, cost, penalty, etc. The score is the same as the objective if you have no problem. Now, if you look on the second, near the bottom there, it says infeasibility, false, and missing/bad solution, false. If you have an infeasibility, in other words, a hard constraint violation, that will be true, and your score will not be your objective value. It will be the slack objective, which is generally a very bad score. The same is true if you have missing or bad solution files. If you didn't generate a solution file, if there's something that we can't parse, that you get a true there, and again, you get the slack objective. But in general, if things are working, the score should be the same as the objective value. The cost is the actual operational cost. So it's the objective minus the penalty. If you have any soft constraint violations, of which the largest one is listed under max object violation, those are reflected there, and you want to see that the non-objective, the hard constraint violations, should be 0. Otherwise, you get an infeasibility. And you also will tell you the time that it took us to evaluate it, the time that it took your code to run, code 1 and code 2. Next slide. So within the output folder, this is information that is primarily for use in interpreting what your code did. There's a message section. There's the detailed solution, which we'll come to in a minute. The evaluation log. They also get this is where you find the logs from your output, which of course is going to be different. And we also tell you the size of each one of the solution files. This is a very small problem, so it's only 535 bytes for the solution 1 and 600 bytes for the solution 2. But this gives you a feeling for how big the files are in the scenario-dependent length that we give you. On the next page is this detailed solution, which something that's very helpful in interpreting your results. There's a set of headers. These column headers are defined on the evaluation page. They're actually in the evaluation code, which you can pull down from GitHub. That's the master definition, but we've echoed the definition of each one of these on the evaluation page. The first line under contingency, it's blank. That's the base configuration. You always want to see then feasible a 0 in there. That's if there's a 1, that means that contingency or the base is infeasible. The penalty is the the actual the objective value is what it is. The penalty is the difference between the cost and the objective value. So contingencies, of course, have no cost. So it's all a penalty. And then there's all the different kinds of violations. In this particular case, you can see that the base case, which is the top line, their p-val -val 0.193 tells you that this particular solution had a power imbalance for bus 3 of 0.193 megawatts. Is that correct? Did I get that correct, Jesse? And that
it's per unit.
It's per unit. I'm sorry.
0.193
per unit. And the reactive power imbalance is 0.020 per unit. So this is, as I said, this is not a very good solution, which is represented in that. But this can be useful in helping you identify which contingencies you're having problem with, or which violations are causing your score to be higher than you want it to be. And the next slide, there's also, we give you our evaluation log. It's called feasibility.error. If something goes wrong, this is not a bad place to look to see what we thought might have happened. There's some interesting information highlighted in red here, the basic configuration of the scenario, and on the left and on the right is basically the information that goes into the summary of each one of the scenarios. Next slide. So every member of your team can make a submission, and to see all the team submissions, you want to go to the team page, and that's where you'll see who on your team has made the submissions and the scores that they are getting. When you think that you're ready for challenge 1, there's a request just under the challenge up there. Ask for C1 submission access, and that will help you generate a message to us requesting that we look at your results, see what you're doing, if you've got the idea, and then we give you access to a Challenge 1 submission, which is discussed on the next slide. So when you get Challenge 1 permission, you'll see a blue Submit button there. To get there, what we want you to do is generate some valid solution files, so we know that you basically understand the problem that we want you to solve. And like I said, there's that request link on the team page, and you'll see that Submit button. We want you to encourage you to continue to develop your algorithm in the Sandbox, especially the original data set scenarios. Get those so that you're getting good scores. Once you're getting good scores, then by all means try the original data set on the Challenge 1 submission page. You can select all. The default is to run this under all divisions, but unless you've got, while you're working on the pieces of the original data set code, unless you have code in there that does something different for Division 3, please just use the Division 1 and 2. Because if there's nothing sensitive, there's nothing that does anything different for Division 3, running Division 3 and 4 at this point will just reproduce your results in Division 1 and 2. And of course, for trial 1, 2, and the final one, all 4 divisions you won't have an option. All of them will be run, and there's only one submission for trial 1, trial 2, and the final. I was going to actually try to do a live submission. I'm very sorry that my machine, which hasn't crashed in years, decided to do it just right now. So I don't have a mechanism for doing a live submission. I'm using someone else's machine right now, and I don't want to try that without rehearsing it. So I think we're down to the question sections. Is that right? Yes. Back to you, Corey.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Give me 1 second to bring up some questions. This is the one I want. Okay, so we have compiled some questions, and it'll be some in email, some on the screen as you see. Some will just be read to you as we've collected them throughout the process. So, first question is, I have access to the Sandbox, but how do I gain access to the platform for Challenge 1, Trial 1? The answer is given there. Email ARPA-Comp. That's basically Steve Elbert. They will assist you on that. I've been developing my algorithm and testing in the Sandbox. Is this sufficient ahead of Trial 1? No, really you need to go not just deal with the Sandbox, but get on the leaderboard in front of Trial 1 to see how you're doing. I would think that competitive teams would do that unless they are concerned as to how they will perform. Getting on the leaderboard, showing how you are doing, showing others how you are doing. As of yet, people haven't been willing to do that, and I know that some teams are waiting around. I do not suggest that. I suggest that you start interacting with the leaderboard to see how you're doing. There's a larger list of the data sets associated to that leaderboard than in the Sandbox, and you'll get a better idea as to what's to come in Trial 1 by interacting with those data sets. Okay, next question. If I do not resubmit for Trial 2 or the final event, can I just roll over my last submission? No, you cannot. I'll rephrase that question. So if I submit to Trial 1, are you just going to take my Trial 1 submission and take it for me and reapply it to Trial 2 or the final event? No. Okay? I'll actually add a question, a related question to that as well. do I have to participate in trial 1 in order to participate in trial 2? The answer is no, right? You can participate in any trial or final event irrelevant to your prior or future participation. That's all your choice. There's also the opportunity to be listed as an anonymous person, except for some of the teams that we are funding, they do not have that option. And you can also change your anonymous state throughout the competition. So if you want to go anonymous in trial 1 and then show who you are in trial 2, you can do that. You just have to fill out the forms accordingly and notify us of the change. Next question, why can't I see any results in the leaderboard? No team has made a full submission on the original data sets that we've released. OD1 has 50 in them, and I believe OD2 has 40. Is that not correct, Steve?
70.
70?
70, yes.
Yeah, so from original dataset 1 release and original dataset 2 release, you have a large number of different scenarios for a variety of network sizes to test your approach on. Nobody has gotten to that full batch as of yet. No, people have only been primarily playing with the Sandbox. Time to move beyond that and start preparing for the trial 1 event, which will have even more scenarios in trial 1 than what you're finding in OD1 and OT2. And the data sets are going to be harder to solve as well. They will grow in size. We had a slide about that last time in webinar 1, so where we showed how the distribution of network size and complexity will change over time for the trial, from trial 1 to trial 2 to the final event. Again, something I said in the first webinar, our goal is to attack the SEOPF problem to the level of difficulty that is reflective of a large ISO like PGM. And we may even bring in something of the size of an interconnection, okay? So it will grow in complexity. Additional questions. Can anyone on my team submit an entry? Yes. So anybody on your team can come and submit an approach. Keep that in mind, and you can see who has submitted an approach and how it did, okay? How many submissions does my team get during each official event? This is very important. 1. For trial 1, your team gets 1 submission. For trial 2, your team gets 1 submission. For the final event, your team gets 1 submission. Okay? So if somebody goes rogue on your team and submits without you knowing, and you're the team lead for some of these events, that is your submission. It is up to you in terms of managing your team to make sure that when that window opens for trial 1, that you are aware that this is your official submission and you submit. You also get a notice from us that thank you for submitting for trial 1. Okay? What do I do if I submit the wrong code for trial 1 or the future? If anything that goes wrong, the thing to do is ASAP email us. Okay? Email ARPA, the PNL email, ARPAComp@pnl.gov, and email me, Corey Hedman, corey.hedman@hq.doe.gov. That information was given previously in the webinar. So if you think something went wrong, you had a typo, whatever, you put in your official submission, first thing to do is to email us ASAP, okay? What should I do if something goes wrong with my submission and it fails? If there is a platform failure, we will, of course, rerun it. If there's a logic error in your code, unfortunately, we can't make any guarantee as to what's going to happen with that. That is why you should be coming forward now, playing with the leaderboard, doing it in advance, making sure that your code is ready to go, okay? Because you get that 1 submission. We are not giving you multiple tries to see how you do on the data sets that we're withholding at this time for the trial event. That's the whole point, that you don't know what's going on. You're going to submit your code. You're going to get evaluated evenly to everybody else, and then at the end, we see how people perform. Okay? If there are some report submission errors, though PNL is often tracking that, you can, of course, email them, arpacomp@pnl.gov. Okay? Can I submit after the event closes? No. We're going to have a very firm treatment of this. This is not like some conference that always puts a 2-week postponement on the deadlines for a paper or anything else, okay? There's going to be in a window, it's going to close, and after it closes, you cannot submit. You lose out on submitting during the window, I'm sorry, too bad. Okay, can I get an extension for my submission? Same answer, no. Okay, come to the website, play with the leaderboard in advance, be ready to submit during the 2 weeks that we've given to you. That's plenty of time. Okay, what happens if I make changes to my GitHub code after I submit for trial 1? So this is very important. Okay, when you make a submission for trial 1 or trial 2 or the final event and you put your code on GitHub, we are immediately going to pull that code, save it on our end at P&L, and then that is your submission. So once you submit it again, even though you have access to your code through GitHub, if you go and you make a change to your GitHub code, we've already pulled it, so therefore your change will be irrelevant, okay? So it will not make any difference. You will not have that opportunity to say, make a last-minute change after you submit it. Once you submit it, we're going to pull it. It's done. You go back and make a change, and then you think that your change should have been scored. That will be false. And again, this is being recorded, so we're broadcasting it right now to make that absolutely clear.
Corey?
Yes.
Let me add that when you do the submission, you'll see on your screen that cloning part. And the cloning has a time and date stamp on it. So you will know exactly when we pulled your repo.
There you go. Just to repeat that, Steve is saying that you're also going to get a cloning mark that stamps the time and date as to when we've pulled it. So you're going to know exactly when we pulled it. All right, moving on. Okay, that's it for the ones that we have compiled. We do have more, just give me a chance to go through them. All right, another question. Let's see if I can type these up. There we go. Yeah. All right, is MATLAB Neural Networks Toolbox available in the platform? I believe hand that to you, Steve.
It is not at the moment, but we will look into getting that.
Okay. Give me just a second. I'm going to clean this up. All right. So it's not currently available. We will get it momentarily. All right. Next question. Is there a leaderboard associated with the Sandbox?
No.
The answer to that, no. You can play with the Sandbox. You'll be able to see how you perform. You'll not be able to see how others perform. It's just a few limited data sets. Okay, go to the leaderboard to see how you're doing in comparison to others. How many times can one submit to the Sandbox?
There's currently no limit, but we reserve the right to install one if we think you're abusing the system.
Yeah, we want to give everybody as much opportunity as we can to make an innovation in this area. So we're going to have it as open as possible, but as Steve properly said, if you're trying to abuse the situation or it's just getting too much in terms of processing on our end, which it will become more complicated as the data sets grow, we may have to limit your submissions. But as of right now, there's nothing of that nature implemented for you. Okay? Does the submission platform allow for multiple languages or libraries to be exploited? For example, say my main submission is Python but invokes GAMP scripts as sub-processes. Is this acceptable?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes. And our worst case example does exactly that.
All right, next question. Why does code 2 not have a strict limit enforced, time limit enforced? I'm going to jump to the other presentation to remind everybody of that. Okay, here it is. Okay, so again, the question, why does code 2 not have a strict time limit enforced? So there's a couple of answers to this question. One is that very well there may be a time limit imposed later on within code 2, but that would only be as a result of excessive computation aspects to it. Pretty much there is no time limit associated with code 2, and the reason that that is the case is the nature of the SEOPF problem and to design what we think is the best approach for testing SEOPF approaches. Security constrained optimal power flow with its pre and post post-contingency stages, first stage and second stage. It's a two-stage problem. It has a natural decomposable structure to it for the second stage. Experts in this space will know that the majority of contingencies oftentimes, or a good portion of contingencies, may not be that difficult to handle. We would anticipate contingency screening procedures that basically say, I'm relatively confident that I can ignore this contingency such that it's not going to give me problems, right? Code 1, your solution 1 file basically is timed because that is a reflection of if you were to implement your approach in a real setting, when you implement contingency screening and the ISO or the utility wants you to solve the problem within 10 minutes, your code produces a base case first stage solution in 10 minutes, as well as feasible solutions for certain post-contingency states or the second stage within that 10 minutes that you deem to be credible. But whether you need to handle all post-contingencies, all second stage situations within the 10 minutes, that's not actually what's done today, again, because of the structure that we know exists within security constrained optimal power flow and the likelihood of certain contingencies not being of a critical nature. So therefore, the very reason we have structured a code 1 and a code 2 is to allow people to basically take that capability in the choice of their algorithmic approach and hack exactly at that. A team can choose to ignore all contingencies, solve the base case, produce a code 1 solution within the time limit, and then handle the contingencies that are going to be mapped to your first stage solution through our requirements, right, within the code 2. You can do that, but of course you would likely find yourself with a ton of violations of the contingencies because you ignored all of them and some of them were critical. And you don't have a proper base case feasible N-1 solution, right? On the other hand, somebody can take an in-between approach. It is completely up to you as to how you deem that to be the case, as to how confident you are in your contingency screening process, okay? So solution 2 file, its generation, code 2, is not timed for this very purpose. If that's not clear in terms of my long explanation from an algorithmic technical perspective, feel free to email me. Okay, next question. Give me a second. How is the voltage information in the output files used in the scoring platform? Is it just used as initialization for power flow? Okay. For that question, I would refer you to the rules document and the formulation document, okay? In terms of your output files, you do have to generate an AC power flow solution for base case and post-contingency states, all right? And then we have a very specific formulation posted online, you can see it, specifying what happens if you violate a particular constraint. There are different rules for different settings. Some are relaxed with penalties, some are not. Some are hard enforced, okay? And then if you get a violation of a hard constraint that cannot be violated, you're going to get a large infeasibility penalty, okay? We also provide information, by the way, not in terms of the output files, but in the input files relative to whether you're in Division 1, 2, 3, or 4. Where is it? In terms of the incumbent solution information that we provide to you. There. In terms of these divisions. And that is also online associated to the rules and formulation described as well.
Corey?
All right, next question. Shouldn't the participation factors add up to 1? If the answer is yes, that is not the case of Challenge 1 data sets. Okay. That's a good question. All right, so it depends upon how you want to formulate and handle the situation. I thought that our participation factors were summing to 1 as of right now.
No.
No.
Go ahead, Jesse. Do you have an answer?
The participation factors need not add up to 1.
Yeah, they need not add up to 1 because the way that we have formulated the problem is such that there basically is not a free variable, but a variable in there that basically handles the normalization aspect of it. So basically the way of saying it is The formulation is structured such that if your participations do not add up to 1, there's still a normalization such that the post-contingency generator response is sufficient to cover the loss of the generation plus change in losses. That's basically the structure of it. You do not know exactly in advance how the response is going to happen, as well as who's going to respond, because there are structures associated to the zones in our model formulation that enable, for instance, if you have a large interconnection, you may want to formulate your SEOPF problem such that only Zone 1 responds to an outage in Zone 1. So we've enabled the data sets as well as the formulation to accommodate that, and therefore the predetermined Zone 1 participation factors may not add up to 1 relative to the fact that they're only a fraction of the participation factors of the entire system. Okay? So the short answer is no, they do not add up to 1. I would encourage you to check the formulation in terms of how we've accommodated that, again, with this normalization. Jesse, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just one more thing for some intuition on why they don't need to add up to 1 or why we chose that they shouldn't. So in a contingency, a generator may go out of service, and if that generator has some participation factor on it, then even if the participation factors did add up to 1 prior to the contingency, they don't in the contingency anymore. So they're missing that term. So there seems to be no point to normalizing them in advance.
Yeah, so that's a very good point, Jesse. So again, the contingencies that are going to be modeled in these data sets can involve generators that are listed as a generator to respond during a contingency, which illustrates the very point that Jesse just made. If that generator has a contingency, even in that situation, your participation factors therefore cannot add up to 1 if they previously did. Okay? So, moving on to additional questions. Are the 10-minute and 45-minute time limits CPU or wall clock time?
Wall clock time.
Thank you, Steve. Next question. What is the meaning of submission.conf in slide 3?
Go to the languages page. I don't know, do you have access to the website?
I do. Where would you like me to go?
References, pull down the references and then go to languages. Scroll down just a little bit. So this has the primary version is a selective version of the language. Python, the default is 3.7, but we also offer 2.7. We have 3 different versions of Julia, and if you want a different one, this is the way you choose that. There's quite a bit of additional information needed for MPI, message passing interface runs, and this is how you control that with this information.
Okay, thank you. 1 second. Let me get back to the other questions. All right. Okay, next question. The document on the Go website actually suggests to add the SSH key as a repository-specific deploy key, not an SSH key. Which is preferred? That's to P&L.
Whatever works. I don't know that off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
So whoever sent in that question, why don't you follow up with us and email us, and we'll see if we can get you an answer to that question. Okay? So the next question, is the submission for the team site, is the submission from the team site, oh, I see. Sorry, I'm misunderstanding the question. So can I submit from the team site? All individuals, again, can submit from your team, and you'll see that on your account.
No, you only submit from, well...
Did I get that wrong, Steve?
Well, it doesn't... when you make a submission, it's as an individual. You're there, it's what you log on. You don't log on as a team. You individual. And then you click the submit, so that submit is associated with you, and it shows up both as on your account page, and it also shows up on the team account page.
Is my answer correct there? You do not log on as a team to submit. You submit as an individual, but it is linked to the team account page.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Next question. How is the time limit imposed? Is the time limit per scenario, per data set, per network, or the entire challenge? The time limits are on a per scenario basis, okay? So I'm going to jump back to the presentation again. Where did it go? Here. Okay. So this create code 1, create code 2, again with the time limits, right? You create your code 1, you create your code 2. In trial 1, let's say there's going to be 5 different batches of networks, each with 100 scenarios. So your code 1 and code 2 are going to be run 500 times. When code run is executed those 500 times, each of those 500 times there will be a time limit for each scenario. 10 minutes for divisions 1 and 3, 45 minutes for divisions 2 and 4. Okay? All right. Next question. 1 second. Are there details on the hardware such as the number of available cores? That should be on the website. Where do I go, Steve?
References evaluation platform.
Okay.
So these are, each node has 2, I've forgotten the which Intel chip it is, but each one has 12 cores. So there are 24 cores per node.
Okay. So yeah, the information for those sort of questions should be on the website. We encourage you to find that information on the website. If you do not find something, also, again, please contact us and we'll help direct you to where that information is or make an update to the website so it's clear. So that's one also additional answer to that question. I would also reiterate something that we said in webinar 1. If you are not satisfied, if you think that there is a significant issue of something that is not, we are not making enough cores available because parallelization is key, or you want to have GPUs, or you want to have a different language or a different solver, make your request ASAP, okay? And if you've made a request before and we've told you that we're thinking about it like GPUs and you're still stuck on really thinking GPUs are important for this, make your request again. It's very important that we make this competition as accommodating as possible. We understand that. We want that to be the case. We also have our own limitations as well in terms of what we can handle, but we want to make it as accommodating as possible, so do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have a reasonable request. Next question. What is the purpose of needing to submit separate scripts for the base case versus solving contingencies? I think that went back to my very long explanation associated to code 1 and code 2. Okay? So again, by design associated to the competition, we are trying to structure the time limit associated to code 1 based upon if you were to be successful in this competition, take your approach and try to sell it to someone in industry, right? Your time limit that you find here is similar to the time limit type of situation and complexity you'll find in reality. Okay, that's the intent. And there is the natural fact that, again, even if we give you 8,000 contingencies to solve with an SEOPF problem for a system the size of PGM, do you necessarily need to explicitly solve within that code 1 environment all contingencies and verify feasibility? That is up to you. We are leaving that completely up to you. Somebody who's a master of knowing what contingencies will be constraining in the system and which ones will not, that is actually a part of the SEOPF problem, and it affects your algorithmic approach, or at least I think it would. So we want to accommodate that aspect of the technical approach. That's why. Okay. Let's see. Next question. Is MATLAB Parallel Processing Toolbox available for the platform?
Yes, it is. And you can see that if you go to the references/solvers page, it lists all the toolboxes that we have for MATLAB at this moment.
All right. Dave, is that all of the questions?
Yep, that's all the ones we've got so far.
All right. I think we are now then out of questions. Thank you very much for everybody that has participated in this webinar. I want to jump back to my presentation now to end this and give you a couple quick reminders. Webinar 1 is already on YouTube. I gave a presentation of it earlier. Webinar 2 right now will be posted within a few days, we hope, early next week, perhaps. Webinar 3 will be rescheduled and we'll send out an announcement. I've already gotten one email. If I am not, based upon this, if you did not receive an email from me making this announcement or the cancellation yesterday, then you're not on my email list. I don't know about you. You want to be on the email list, send me an email. I've gotten one such request, okay? And with that, we want to thank everybody. Take care. Have a good rest of your week. Thank you.